Hello, my name is Dina Ionesco, and I work for the UN Agency for Refugees. I have been specializing on the very complex and sensitive questions of climate change and human mobility for many years of my professional life. Today, I would like to give a few insights on how are we prepared, in fact, for the climate-induced mobility in our European context. Are we prepared? And my answer would be that we have seen major progress over the past 2 decades in terms of awareness, knowledge, data, and activities that connect, in fact, human mobility and climate change. We are still very far away from being fully prepared because we are speaking of major changes in terms of our environment and the impact it has on our movements, be them forced, displacement, or chosen. Sometimes the choice is also constrained. However, I would really like to highlight that we have made progress, and this progress has been in many different directions. We have made progress in understanding how international protection and human rights are important in the context of human mobility, in the context of climate change. For instance, we know that the Geneva Convention from 1951, that is the basis for obtaining a refugee status, is not mentioning climate or environmental grounds. However, we know now that climate change aggravates, for instance, situation of conflict, and it's this intersection that matters, and that in fact, in some situations, because of this understanding of the intersection, we might be able, nevertheless, to use this refugee status to protect people also who are displaced in the context of the negative effects of climate change. You have also the important human right that it's non-refoulement. States have an obligation to not return people to situations that put their lives in danger, which means that we have situations that are called of calamity related to a disaster, for instance, a major flood. We have situations that are a humanitarian situation of protection because of conflict aggravated by an environmental hazard. We have situation of temporary protection. We have examples where public disorder is so important because of a catastrophe that people cannot be returned. We have examples of legislation and cases, for instance, in Italy or in Lithuania, in the Czech Republic, in Europe, that in fact integrate this awareness of environmental related disasters in the protection that can be given to citizens. We have a case, for instance, also in France, of a citizen from Bangladesh who, in fact, on grounds of health, could remain under the French protection, not be returned, though behind these health questions, we have an issue again of pollution and of environmental matters. So there's a whole world of international protection of human rights that exists to protect and provide some opportunities. A second big space, it's the space of migration policy. We have visas, we have an understanding of labor migration, of educational pathways. We have the whole understanding of migration governance at regional level, free movement protocols. There's a whole set of policy options that is available from the migration governance side to respond also in case of environmental related disasters, or very, very slow also degradation of the environment related to climate change. And the Global Compact on Migration is speaking very specifically about this, on how, in fact, migration governance has to respond to the challenge of mobility in the context of climate change, but seeing it positively also, seeing it as part of the solution, and also supporting even the migrants and the refugees to contribute to the climate action. There's another set that is extremely important of solutions that comes in fact from the climate policy. And there as well, over the past 2 decades, our understanding and awareness and solutions in terms of climate adaptation, climate mitigation, loss and damage have little by little integrated the question of migration, of displacement, and of planned relocation. So you have several set of policy responses and countries that have now integrated this dimension, in particular, for instance, the climate vulnerable countries and also the Pacific countries. The last element, I think it's key, and I would like to mention it, it's that we need a change, in fact, and we have to continue in developing our own empathy. It's the empathy that I think it's the major progress that we have to continue on doing, our own understanding of humanity, the fact that we can be empathetic to absolutely any human being, and it's in both directions. It's for those who receive, but also for those who arrive. There's as much need of empathy from the migrant who moves as from the community who receives the migrant. The European Union has tried for the past 2 decades to progress in its understanding on how to be prepared for the major challenge and opportunity of climate induced human mobility. This means that since 2011 and the first consultation, and 2013 and the first EU Commission paper on migration, environment and climate change, there have been different ways of addressing this issue. The EU, for instance, has funded major projects now of research that speak of this nexus between human mobility and human rights, also question of development and climate change. One of these big projects was a project done in the beginning of 2014 on the connection between research and policy on migration, environment and climate change. And one major project has just been closed in 2024. It's the project called Habitable that spoke of thresholds of habitability and connecting this habitability concept to displacement and migration issues. The EU has also, at the level of the European Parliament, made a lot of efforts to bring this discussion to the governmental level. And it has organized also research seminars and discussion at policy level. However, the European Pact on Asylum and Migration is not specifically focused on environmental and climate solution, but it nevertheless acknowledges the importance of climate change as one of the key drivers of mobilities of today. And the whole EU also policy on environment and the Green Pact and the understanding on the climate solutions also has now integrated displacement, migration, and planned relocation questions aligned with the Paris Agreement on climate change.